9 months ago, I made a video comparing My Hero 1's Justice to Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm, and teased the fact that I would be doing a video comparing My Hero 1's Justice 2 to Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm 2. Well, better late than never. To recap, I compared the games in 5 different categories: gameplay, character roster, story mode, replayability, and visual design. Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm destroyed My Hero 1's Justice 4-1, so let's see if My Hero 1's Justice 2 can pull through and get revenge. Gameplay, which was our longest section last video, is going to probably be our shortest section this video, because both of these games' gameplay remain largely unchanged from their predecessors. To summarize the points I made last time, both of these games are 3D arena fighters. My Hero 1's Justice took a more standard route and is a pretty generic fighting game. You could easily win by just spamming special attacks, and the gameplay itself was just really floaty. Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm, on the other hand, was more unique and offered a much higher skill level while still being fun for beginners, mainly due to the resource management system found from the chakra meter. Overall, it's a much smoother experience and you can get a lot more out of this. The gameplay, despite a couple of changes, is practically exactly the same for both games. The biggest change between My Hero 1's Justice 1 and 2 is that you can now dodge. That's not the only change. There are team ultimates, a stamina meter for dash cancels, wall running, and quick stepping, and yeah, that's about it. Overall, it does feel more polished, but it's still floaty, generic, and spammable. Ultimate Ninja Storm 2, on the other hand, has got a number of changes on top of an already solid foundation from the first game. The support system is more in-depth with different support types, team jutsus, they're not team-specific ones like 1's Justice, and special team combinations that give bonus stats. Ultimate jutsus no longer have button prompts and are much quicker. The substitution jutsu is much easier to pull off, which is both good and bad. Wall combat is entirely gone. Some jutsus can now be charged to use a different effect, such as charging Naruto's Rasengan will instead use a big ball Rasengan, and there are also a number of smaller changes that I haven't listed. It's kind of no competition. Ultimate Ninja Storm's gameplay was just way better than 1's Justice's gameplay, and the few minor changes in 1's Justice 2 aren't even enough to catch up to Ultimate Ninja Storm's gameplay, let alone Ultimate Ninja Storm 2's. This was the one category where 1's Justice beat Ultimate Ninja Storm in the last video, and that was mainly because I felt bad that 1's Justice didn't win any of their category, so let's see if this will be a more fair comparison this time. Both games have a very similar number of characters. 1's Justice 2 has 40 characters with 11 additional DLC characters for a total of 51 characters, whereas Ultimate Ninja Storm 2 has 42 characters. Now, where the main difference between these rosters lies is in how many characters are veteran characters. In 1's Justice 2, every character from 1's Justice 1 is here, that being 23 characters, which means that there are 17 new characters and 11 new DLC characters. Ultimate Ninja Storm 2, on the other hand, does not have every character from the previous game. Kind of. Ultimate Ninja Storm 1 took place during Part 1 of Naruto, whereas 2 takes place during the Shippuden era, after the time skip. So the child versions of characters from Storm 1 have been replaced by teen versions of those same characters in Storm 2. As for the adults from Storm 1, they are all back except for the 3rd Hokage and Kimimaro. So technically, only 8 out of the 42 characters of Storm 2 are ported over from Storm 1, and even then, they've all been updated in one way or the other. The rest of the cast is older versions of Storm 1 characters, or just new characters to the series entirely. But which one is better? It's difficult to say. While 1's Justice undeniably has more characters, Storm 2 has more new characters. In both games, each character plays in their own unique style and stands out from the rest, so in terms of variety, both games hit the mark. This time around, there are no glaring exclusions from the story, unlike last game where Storm 1 just flat out skipped Zabuza and Haku. It's a tough call, but I think I'm going to give this point to 1's Justice 2, mainly because Storm 2 removed the 3rd Hokage and Kimimaro, and didn't just bring over the child versions of the main characters. I know they were trying to stay accurate to the time frame that the game is set in, but Storm 4 just completely ignores this. Even 1's Justice 2 ignores this, with inclusions like Nomu and Stain. Last video, Storm 1 slaughtered 1's Justice in this category, but 1's Justice 2 seemed to hear the criticism its predecessor received and amped up its own story mode. The largest issue with 1's Justice story mode was that it was mainly told through anime screenshots. The few cutscenes that were there were obviously cheaply made, there was no variety in gameplay. The entire story mode was just the same types of fights over and over. Starting in 1's Justice 2, the story is still told mainly through anime cutscenes, not looking too good so far, but the few cutscenes that are here do look a lot better than the first games. This time around there is a unique boss fight, Yes, one unique boss fight, and that one boss fight just boils down to dodge big boss attacks, spam normal combos until plus ultra meter is full, use your plus ultra attack, rinse and repeat. And that's One Justice 2 story mode. Is it better than the first? Yeah. Is that saying a lot? No. They did the bare minimum to make it better than the first game's story mode, which, like I just said, required no effort at all. The story mode is still a waste of time and is a sorry excuse for a story mode. Storm 2, on the other hand, holy shit. Storm 2's story mode is fantastic. While Storm 1 featured a fully open Konoha to explore, Storm 2 is more like an RPG and allows free roaming through Konoha and to other lands, but doesn't offer much in terms of camera controls or mobility. But honestly, I don't mind. Storm 2 took out the fluff side missions that Storm 1 had and forced you to complete before continuing the story. Storm 2 follows from the start of Shippuden through the Naruto vs. Pain and Sasuke vs. Itachi fights, and where the story mode really excels is in its boss fights. Every major boss fight is unique. Some offer different terrains, whereas others offer different fighting controls entirely. What every boss fight has, and is probably the best part of every boss fight, are the QuickTime events. These are accompanied by some beautifully animated action cutscenes that are still engaging due to the QuickTime events. Also, there are many more general cutscenes in this game than One's Justice 2. While not every scene is a cutscene, some are just simply characters talking in the overworld, I'd still take that over the anime screenshots that One's Justice 2 has. This category is literally no competition. Storm 2 easily takes it. The ability to replay the game. I'm assuming that's the proper definition of replayability. Regardless, this category look at game modes and unlockables to see which game has more replay value and which game can keep you engaged for longer. One's Justice 2 has a lot of different game modes that are all kind of the same. As we already know, there's the lackluster story mode, but there's also mission mode, free battle, online battles, arcade, and training. In addition to the game modes, there are also customizable banners as well as unlockable cosmetics for characters. Storm 2, on the other hand, has story mode, free battle, and online battle. Yeah, there's no training mode, which is just really weird. I wanted to get some footage of specific moves, but couldn't do it easily because there's no training. There's also customizable banners like One's Justice 2, as well as unlockable substitution jutsus and unlockable costumes, but they're not nearly as customizable as One's Justice 2's character customization. It may seem like One's Justice 2 easily wins this, but like I said before, all of its game modes are kind of exactly the same. They're just variations of normal battles, where Storm 2's story mode and free battle are very different. Story mode has exploration, character relationships, levels, side missions, and replayable boss fights. Now I know that I just said One's Justice 2 doesn't easily win this one, but rather it difficultly wins this one. While the game modes in Storm 2 are higher quality than One's Justice 2, that's already been reflected in the gameplay and the story mode categories. In terms of things to do, One's Justice 2 has better unlockables that make me want to play more. Visual design. How good does the game look, and does it have a unique and visually pleasing art style? Both of these games retain the same art style from their predecessors, but are just visually updated considering their newer games. One's Justice 1 compared to One's Justice 2 is a bigger step up than Storm 1 to Storm 2, but ultimately Storm 2 still looks better, which is wild considering that Storm 2 released in 2010, and One's Justice 2 released 10 years later in 2020, but it's true. Storm 2's art style is just perfect. During the boss fight cutscenes, it really shines. One's Justice 2 isn't ugly, but it just still looks really cheap and generic. You can tell it's cheaply animated because the plus ultras still just take place in a generic foggy desert instead of in the actual stage you're fighting on. This category, like every category Storm 2 has won, is no competition. Storm 2 easily takes this final point. And with that, the final score is 3-2, with Storm 2 coming out on top, to literally no one's surprise. It was closer than the last video technically, but when you really think about it, I would say it was just as one-sided, because in those three categories that Storm 2 won, it won by a landslide, because One's Justice 2 just didn't have the passion and money put into it that Storm 2 did. It's very clear that the One's Justice series is a cash grab, whereas the Storm series is more of a passion project to celebrate the story of Naruto. Well, it is until Naruto Storm Connections, but that's a topic for another video. I would hint at a Naruto Storm 3 versus One's Justice 3 video, but One's Justice 3 doesn't exist, and will probably take longer than 9 months to release, so I'll leave it at that. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.